Today there's no real necessity for charcuterie in today's society. We have refrigeration. We have the best practice farming techniques and slaughtering techniques and all those sorts of things. So we can our meat can last a long time. Cryovacuuming and all sorts of things, freezing and that sort of stuff. And charcuterie was born out of a necessity to preserve meat in days gone by when when the autumn harvest was completed and there was a bountiful of meat left over, more than could be consumed upon time. So the idea of salting meat came about, so we could then preserve that for a little bit longer. Drying was another way of preserving meat as well, by hanging meat up after it's been salted to remove some of that moisture to preserve that meat as well. And then from there, we started smoking meats and all sorts of stuff, using things that were around us. Again, going back to that sort of regionality and using things that you had at hand and that sort of stuff. So from my point of view, and from the Piper Stick Company's point of view, there's no real need for charcuterie in today's context, except that it just tastes good. And that's what we're here for. We create these products, we create these dishes that we do at the Piper Stick Company because they taste great. They're not something that is mind-boggling difficult. They're not something that the common person or the good cook can't do themselves. They are a laborious process. They do take time. The terrines at the Piper Stick Food Company are a 3-day process to produce those. So from our point of view, we produce charcuterie that we sell because people love the idea of being able to do it. They like the idea of sitting down for 3 days to make a terrine. But quite often we find ourselves being a bit time poor. So we are here to fill that void. So I'm just going to chop this parsley fairly roughly. And the whole idea of this dish is, the 3 main contents of this dish are the ham hocks that are in there. We're cooking it in white wine. The wine's got a bit of acidity in there as well, so that's going to counterbalance that richness of the hops that we have in there. So we've got that nice balance of the acid and the richness, the fattiness of the meat. And then the parsley comes into it as well because it's going to finish the palate with a beautiful clean flavour. It's going to really sort of lift that dish to a higher level, to lighten it a little bit, I suppose. I never ever cooked with music like this before. It's quite relaxing. We'll have to find out what the CD is. I can't imagine all the cooks at work dancing around listening to this sort of yellow to get much done. Anyway, so I'm just going to cut this parsley, as I have, fairly roughly. And now with this, I'm just going to put this aside because I want those hops now to cook for another 10 or 15 minutes or so. Those vegetables are going to cook in there. Once they've cooked to a point that I'm satisfied with, I'm going to remove those. I allow them to cool a little bit so I can handle them with my hands. And then from there we can construct the jambon persillé. I've got my Damian. Thank you. So there's our parsley there. Our hops are cooking away. We've got our parsley there. I'm going to pop this over here. And then from there we can start talking about our lard pastry. So the lard pastry that we're making today, we're using a recipe of 600 grams of plain flour, and to that we're going to add 210 grams of pork lard, and with that pork lard we're going to add a little bit of water, about 270 mils of water. We're going to bring that to the boil, we're going to pour that over the pastry. And this is an old school pastry, and I come from a family of cooks. My parents are cooks and my grandparents were cooks, and I have that classic story that I don't try and bang on too much about because it sounds very cliche. But this is a recipe that my grandmother used to make, and they used to sell these English pork pies at the Wigan Market in the UK near Manchester. And so it's a recipe that we've taken on board. We've adapted slightly to suit our needs. And at the Piper Stick Food Company, we probably make about 100 to 150 kilos of hot water pastry a week, which is not a lot, but for when there's 2 of us doing it, it's a lot of rolling to be done. So the pastry we have here, I've got the flour here, 600 grams of plain flour. We're using plain flour, not baker's flour, because we want the pastry to be sort of fairly soft at the end. Baker's flour, which we've used for bread baking, has a higher gluten content, so it gives a tougher pastry. Great for bread, great for holding your air structure and that sort of stuff. We want to have ourselves as sort of a little bit of a softer pastry as far as that's concerned. So we've got the flour there, plain flour, and I might just move this one to a higher heat and bring this up to the boiling here. So in here is our lard. We render our own lard at the Piper Stick Food Company. We buy in hard back fat, which we then grind down, and that goes into a big pot and for 4 or 5 hours. Lard. Sure, so you can buy lard now at the specialty butcher shop. I know a friend of mine in Ballarat, it's a long way to drive probably for a bit of lard, but he renders his own lard and goes, it's worth it though, it's a great butcher shop. So, but, the specialty butcher shop will do that sort of stuff for you. You can buy duck lard, and some of the big duck producers now sell that in supermarkets. I've seen it in supermarkets before when I'm doing the late night shopping. If you wanted to, you could substitute butter for this as well if you can't find lard. Failing that, you can make your own lard Correct, absolutely. And the rendering processes we do, we put it through a coarse grinder, and so it could be chopped by hand as well, I guess, but we grind that down, and then with that goes into a pot on a low temperature with a small amount of water. And that water there is just to slow that cooking process down and to make sure that the lard doesn't catch on the bottom and start to burn. And we just stir that periodically with the lid on for maybe 4 or 5 hours on a really low heat. And then after a while we take the lid off just to evaporate any moisture that's in there. And then from there we can pour off the